Good day, everyone. I am Marilu Tomas and I will be reporting hypothesis testing. So we will be discussing the following topics. Of course, the definition of hypothesis, definition of hypothesis testing, two types of hypothesis, types of errors, definition of p-value, one-tailed and two-tailed tests, some terminologies to remember. Alright, let's start. Let's start with the question, what is a hypothesis? So before, we know that hypothesis means a scientific guess. Here, in our course, we have a definition of hypothesis as an assumption about the population parameter. So a parameter is characteristic of the population, like its mean or variance. The parameter must be identified before doing analysis. For example, of hypothesis, I assume the average weight of this class is 58 kilograms. You try to assume, since hypothesis is defined as an assumption about the population parameter. Another definition of hypothesis is it is a testable preliminary statement. So before doing any research or any question, you must have in mind a statement that is predicting any relationship between variables that you will test or be verified through research or explanation or experimentation rather. Again, hypothesis is a testable preliminary statement predicting a relationship between variables. It is designed to be verified through research or experimentation. Another one, it acts as a tentative answer to the research question. It guides the investigations based on the existing knowledge rather than doing a guess or rather than just a guess. For example, students who sleep at least 8 hours per night will, on average, achieve higher grades in standardized tests than students who sleep less than 8 hours a night. So that is an example of a formulated hypothesis. In formulating hypothesis, we will encounter independent and dependent variable. So when we say independent variables, these are the factors manipulated or changed by the researchers to test their effect on a dependent variable, which is the outcome measured. Essentially, the independent variable is the cause. For example, the time of sleep. While the dependent variable is the effect or the measured result. For example, grades in standardized tests. So, with our previous example, so the independent variable is the time of sleep and the dependent variable is the grades in standardized tests. So here are the key aspects of a hypothesis. First, it must be testable. It must be possible to support or to refute it with data. Second one, it must be specific. It must clearly define the variables and the predicted outcome. Another one is the structure. It is often phrased as if and then statements. For example, if you study more, then your grades will improve. And another one is the types. Okay, hypothesis can be simple, having two variables. It can be complex, having multiple variables. It can be directional, predicts a specific direction of change, and non-directional. Now let's proceed to hypothesis testing. When we say hypothesis testing, it is a formal statistical inference method. So now we are referring to the method. It is used to determine if sample data provides enough evidence to reject a specific claim about a population parameter. So testing of hypothesis, again, is an assumption about the population parameter, which is to be tested. For that, in the process of hypothesis testing, we collect sample data. Then we calculate sample statistics. Say, for example, we're computing the mean. And then use that information to judge or decide whether the hypothesized value of population parameter is correct or not. Are we going to accept it or to reject it? So hypothesis involves setting up a null hypothesis, or when we say null hypothesis, it has no effect. And the other one is an alternative hypothesis, which also means an effect is existing or an effect exists. Calculating a test statistic and using a p-value or critical value to make a decision. To test the validity of assumed or hypothetical value of population, of course, we gather sample data and determine the difference between hypothesized value and actual value of the sample mean. So then, we judge whether the difference is significant or not. The smaller the difference, the greater the likelihood that our hypothesized value for the mean is correct. The larger the difference, the smaller the likelihood. In hypothesis testing, the first step, of course, is to state the assumed or hypothesized numerical value of the population parameter. The assumption we wish or want to test is called the null hypothesis. So that is there, as you can see, that is the symbol of a null hypothesis. So speaking of hypothesis, we have, as was mentioned a while ago, we have two types of hypothesis. All right, let's have the null hypothesis. So the null hypothesis is the default assumption that there is no relationship, that there is no effect, that there is no difference. So it represents the status quo, the idea that any observed results are due to random chance rather than a specific cause. So the goal here is that researchers typically aim to reject the null hypothesis by providing strong evidence against it or against the null hypothesis. On the other hand, the alternative hypothesis is the claim the researcher wants to support. So it suggests that there is a significant effect, that there is a significant relationship or significant difference that is not caused by chance. So here, the goal of the researchers is to provide enough evidence to support this claim or to support the alternative hypothesis. So I have here a table elaborating the differences between the null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis. So when we say the basic idea, when we say null hypothesis, again, it refers to that there is no effect or difference. However, on this other side, in the alternative hypothesis, when we say alternative hypothesis, there is an effect or difference. On the observation naman, when we say null hypothesis, it is a result of just a random chance. However, in the alternative hypothesis, the result of a real cause, not just a random chance, but there is a real cause. With regards to the nature of null hypothesis, it's the default. In every study, there is a null hypothesis. So that is the status quo. On the other hand, in the alternative hypothesis, that is the research claim or prediction. So we have the signs used in the null hypothesis. There you go. So the null hypothesis, it states the assumption to be tested. The average weight, for example, the average weight of the semester 2 student is 58 kilograms. Begin with the assumption that the null hypothesis is true. Similar to the notion of innocent until proven guilty. The alternative hypothesis naman is the opposite of the null hypothesis. For example, kanina, with our null hypothesis. Now let's have the alternative hypothesis, which says the average weight of students is not equal to 58 kilograms. Now, how do we do the hypothesis testing? So we have to follow the following steps. Of course, step 1, set up a hypothesis. Write your claim, your assumption. You set it up. Step 2, set up a suitable significance level. So the confidence with which an experimenter rejects or accepts the null hypothesis. It depends on the significance level that you're going to adopt. Level of significance is the rejection region, which is outside the confidence or the acceptance region. The level of significance usually is denoted by that symbol. So how do we select a significance level? Though any level of significance can be adopted, in practice, we either take 5% or 1% level of significance. When we take 5% level of significance, then there are about 5 chances out of 100 that we would reject the null hypothesis. In other words, out of 100, 95% chances are there that the null hypothesis will be accepted. For example, we are about 95% confident that we have made the right decision. Right, what is that significance level or level of significance? So it is often denoted by the Greek letter alpha. It is the fixed probability of incorrectly rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually true. It serves as a predefined threshold or evidentiary standard that determines how much evidence is needed to consider a result statistically significant. Alright, so level of significance, usually denoted by alpha, is the probability of making a type 1 error in hypothesis testing. So in simple terms, when we say level of significance, it is the risk that you are willing to take of rejecting a true null hypothesis. The level of significance is a pre-chosen threshold that determines how strong the evidence must be against the null hypothesis before it is rejected. The key points there. It is set before conducting the test. The level of significance is set before conducting any test. So it represents the maximum acceptable probability of a false positive. Common values are 0.05 or 5% risk, 0.01 or 1% risk, 0.10, 10% risk. Why is it important that we use the level of significance? Because there, we can come up with a decision. Yan. The decision rule. If p-value is less than the level of significance, therefore you reject your null hypothesis. And if the p-value is greater than the alpha or the level of significance, then fail to reject null hypothesis. Example, if the level of significance is equal to 5% or 0.05, this means you accept a 5% chance, nakarawat ka, that there is a 5% chance of rejecting the null hypothesis when it is actually true. So in the context, choosing a smaller level of significance, like for example 0.01, makes the test more strict, reducing false positives but increasing the chance of false negatives. Alright, so the value 0.05, if we are questioning where that 0.05 came from. So the value of 5% is used for the level of significance mostly because of its historical convention and practical convenience, not because of any natural law. Here's why 0.05 became the standard. Based on historical reason, based on Ronald Fisher. So in the 1920s, statistician Ronald A. Fisher suggested 5% as a reasonable cutoff for deciding whether the results were statistically significant. So it corresponds roughly to 2 standard deviations from the mean in a normal distribution. So at that time, it was easy to compute using tables. Fisher did not intend 0.05 to be a strict rule. It's just a useful guideline. Another reason is it balances the errors. So balance between errors. Using 5% creates a balance between type 1 error or the false positive, rejecting a true null hypothesis, or the type 2 error, which is false negative, failing to detect a real effect. So because of 5%, there is a balance between those errors. So a 5% risk was considered a reasonable trade-off, low enough to avoid too many false claims and not too strict to miss the real effects. Next is the practical simplicity, of course. 0.05 is easy to remember. It works well across many fields. The medicine field, psychology, education, business. So it became a shared standard, making studies easier to compare. And lastly, that 0.05 level of significance is not a rule, it's just a convention. So importantly, 0.05 is not required. Researchers choose their level of significance based on their own context. For example, in the field of medicine and safety critical studies, they use more stricter level of significance, and that is 1%. And on the other hand, for exploratory research, which is more lenient, they are using 10%. Our key takeaway here is that 0.05 is used because it's practical and it's traditional, not because it's correct. The choice of the level of significance of alpha should depend on consequences of making an error. So there, if our sample statistic or calculated value fall in the shaded region, or the accepted region, then it simply means that there is no evidence to reject the null hypothesis. It proves that the null hypothesis is true, otherwise it will be rejected. Let's have an analogy here. It's in the courtroom trial. So in courtroom, a defendant is considered not guilty as long as his guilt is not proven. So the prosecutor tries to prove the guilt of the defendant. Only when there is enough charging evidence, the defendant is condemned. In the start of the procedure, there are two hypotheses. The defendant is not guilty, that is the null hypothesis, and the alternative hypothesis, which says the defendant is guilty. The first one is called hypothesis, and the second one is called as the alternative hypothesis. Alright, after choosing the significant level, we proceed to step 3, and that is the determination of suitable test statistic. For example, the z-test, t-test, chi-square, or f-statistic. Then after that, we will determine the critical value from the table for our step 4. The next step is that after doing the computation, check the sample result. Compare the calculated value or the sample result with the value obtained from the table or the tabulated or critical value. After that, you decide. You make decision. Making decisions means either accepting or rejecting the null hypothesis. If computed value or the absolute value is more than the tabulated or critical value, then it falls in the critical region. In that case, reject the null hypothesis. Otherwise, accept. So, in the previous discussion, we have mentioned the type 1 and type 2 errors. So, when a statistical hypothesis is tested, there are 4 possible results. So, first, the hypothesis is true, but our test accepts it. Second one, the hypothesis is false, but our test rejects it. Third, the hypothesis is true, but our test rejects it. And the last one, the hypothesis is false, but our test accepts it. Obviously, the last two possibilities lead to errors. That is rejecting a null hypothesis when it is true. You reject even if it is true, and that is the type 1 error. The second one is you accept the null hypothesis even if it is false, and that is type 2 error. Right. So when people examine data, they want to know if the results are due to a real effect or just a chance. This is where p-values come in. A p-value is a number that helps us judge how surprising our results are if there really were no effect. The smaller the p-value, the less likely it is that the results happened just by chance. So a p-value is the probability of observing results at least as extreme as the ones you got if the null hypothesis were true. So in simple terms, in a simpler manner, a low p-value means your results would be unlikely if they were just due to a chance. The high p-value means your results could easily be explained by chance. So make a decision if p-value is less than the level of significance, you reject the null hypothesis. If p-value is greater than the level of significance, fail to reject null hypothesis. Now let's proceed to the one-tailed and two-tailed tests. So in hypothesis testing, one-tailed and two-tailed tests differ in where we look for evidence against the null hypothesis. One-tailed test checks for an effect in only one direction, either greater than or less than. So when it is used, kailan ginagamit ang one-tailed test? If you have a clear, justified expectation about the direction of the effect. Effects in the opposite direction are not of interest. So hypothesis, right-tailed test greater than, left-tailed test less than. For example, a teacher believes a new study method increases test scores. So the null hypothesis states that p-value is less than or equal to 75, and the alternative one is the value is greater than 75. So all of the rejection region is placed in one tail of the distribution. So the key feature here, it is more powerful in the chosen direction, since it is one-tailed or one direction. It cannot detect, however, it cannot detect the effects in the opposite direction, since we are focused only in one direction. The two-tailed test. A two-tailed test checks for an effect in both directions, either the greater or less. So when do we use two-tailed test? So when you want to detect any difference regardless of direction. This is the most common and safest choice. Hypothesis, null hypothesis, and the alternative hypothesis. It is either equal or not equal. For example, a manufacturer tests whether machine output differs from 100 units. So the null hypothesis, it says the value is equal to 100. The alternative hypothesis states that the value is not equal to 100. The significance level is split between both tails. The key feature here is that the two-tailed test detects any meaningful difference since you have both directions. Slightly less powerful in each direction, however, than a one-tailed test. So what are the effects, or what are the effects on p-value? So when we use one-tailed test, the p-value is calculated in one tail. A two-tailed test, it is split across both tails. A result significant in a one-tailed test may not be significant in a two-tailed test. Here are the illustrations of one-tailed and two-tailed test. Our one-tailed test is a right-tailed one. So how to read the paragraph? So the one-tailed test, this one in the left, the right-tailed. So the shaded area, this one, the shaded area, this one. The shaded area is the right-tailed. The shaded area has level of significance of 0.05 is only on one side of the distribution. We reject the null hypothesis if the test statistic falls beyond the critical value. On the right side, we have the two-tailed test, this one, two-tailed test. As you can observe, this is one-tailed and this is two-tailed. So in the right side, the two-tailed test, the same, 0.05 is split into two tails, having 0.025 in each. We reject the null hypothesis if the test statistic is too large or too small in either tail. And that will be the end of our discussion. Thank you for listening. Once again, I am Marilupi Tomas. Thank you.